Not ready.
Record. We're going live. We're live.
I don't know why you started because I wasn't recording
You
yet.
said you were recording.
No, I did not.
Everybody,
I said
welcome
I
to
was
755
starting.
Israel.
I
We're
said
getting
I
off
was
to a
going
false
to start recording. It's different on this new computer. My QuickTime is different than it was on the other one. So let's see. There we go. New. They're getting to see the sausage made
Yeah,
here.
no, behind the scenes process.
This is good stuff, man.
This is
This is
captivating.
where the award-winning podcast is made. They're getting to see the behind the scenes. This is like a unfettered. Well, good thing we weren't talking about what we were talking about a while ago. Oof, that gets legally ramifications.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome back to 755 is Real. I'm David O'Brien, Braves writer for The Athletic, with my co-host Eric O'Flaherty, who's out in Washington. Looks like the house is coming together finally. Eric, are you going with a goth theme there? It looks black.
Yeah, it's a dark room. Got a wood ceiling up there though, so it looks
cool.
cool.
That's nice, man.
Yeah,
it looks like my dive motel down in Venice with the wood ceiling. That's
Yep.
the only way that it looks like it, though.
Yep.
Otherwise, with my
I've never built a
microwave,
house again. I can tell you that.
with my microwave and the refrigerator, I didn't tell you about how I can't run them at the same time. So we had to unplug and move the microwave to the other side of the room to plug it in this crappy motel.
They know that too.
The fuse went out when I did them.
Yeah.
I called the guy over. Go, are you kidding me with this?
They don't care. There's been 7,000 people tell them that. They just hook it right back up and leave.
As long as I don't get bed bugs or scabies from that bed, I'll be happy to get out of spring training. I'm going to go back there and stay 10 more days in that.
You have to pay for your own hotel?
Of course not. What the hell, man?
So you just chose that place?
I chose that place because we're given a budget this year.
So you
and have you heard what the price of hotels is in Florida?
Yeah.
Outrageous. To stay in a crappy Comfort Inn or a Fairfield Inn, over $300 a night. You pay what you pay for a nice hotel in New York to stay at a Fairfield Inn in Venice right now. And if I do that, I wouldn't even be able to go back. I burn up the budget so fast. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay in this dive, you know.
I paid, I think it was like $15,000 one spring it was a house that wasn't furnished for like a month and a half, however, 2 months in Sarasota. And that was the best deal I could get because nobody will rent to you on that short-term lease.
Bowman's in a crappy little house of Airbnb, and he got a great deal, and he's still paying $200 a night. So you figure over 40 nights, that's $8,000 right there.
Yeah.
The houses down there this year, because a lot of people that have hurricane damage moved into houses, hotels. A lot of the actual Airbnbs are not even open because they were damaged. So the result is they're gouging.
Right.
People. So it sucks. You also got spring breakers. So Anyway, nobody wants to hear about that crap. But that's why I'm in the dive. It does have charm. It's old Florida. But I tell you what, man, the location is so much better than any of those hotels or where the other guys are staying because I'm a mile from the beach in Venice. So I can get up and run on surface streets in the morning in the dark and run to the beach. You can't do that when you're staying out at the Fairfield Inn by I-70. There's nothing out there. There's nothing. There's a bunch of restaurants. I'm near downtown Venice. I can walk to some restaurants. There's a record store. There's a Publix there. I mean, so, the location is great. They're great. It's fun. And when I go back, I could have stayed out there, at the Fairfield Inn, but that drove me crazy last year, man. It's near nothing. So anyway. All right, let's get to it here. Early impressions. I wanted to ask you about Kyle Wright. We talked a little bit about him last time. He had some shoulder soreness in January, so he got a cortisone shot for the first time in his career, which kind of surprised me because a lot of guys who've struggled and gone back and forth have, had a cortisone injection at some point by now, but this was his first. And he said, he had talked to a bunch of pitchers, and some said, 2 weeks, they never had any more problems the rest of the season. Other guys said it barked again, a month later. But he said, I'm in the former group because he's had no problem since then. And he said this is the first time in a few years that his shoulder has felt really smooth and not at all, what did he call it, catchy or sticky. He said it hasn't felt like that at all. So he's really fired up. I mean, he threw a bullpen yesterday, a real bullpen. He threw one a few days ago that was just fastballs, but this time he threw his slider and his curve. our synchronous curve. He's excited, man. And he says his shoulder feels great. He actually thinks it might help his four-seamer a little bit, which is, just been an okay pitch for him, but he thinks it might give it a little more ride with his shoulder being able to extend a little more with a nice smooth shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, cortisone shots, when they work, they're magic.
That's what he described.
It was hit or miss for me. I had a few. I think I had one in my elbow that was like, shit, I feel 19 again. And I had one in my shoulder that did nothing. I think it depends on what you have going on in there. But if it's usually like, if it's strictly inflammation, maybe a minor tear or something that's not really major, but the joint's just like really inflamed. 3 days after that thing, it's like, you feel like you just put 10 years back on your arm, and you can't continue to do them, and right. I think the reason this is his first one is because teams don't just hand them out like they used to. It used to just be like, you want some Voltaren, you want to try cortisone, whatever gets you on the field, they were going to give you. But I think they're more aware of the long-term effects and the risk and the investment they have in the players now, where you're not getting one every day.
Right.
But yeah, it's incredible what, I was talking to somebody about it the other day, and they were saying something about some player. There's an article about a guy saying like, he's only pitching when he feels good this year or something like that, or that's his goal, is to feel good every time. I said, if I only pitched when I felt 100%, I'd have like 17 career games.
Yeah.
Because there's always something hurting, something just, hindering your ability to like fully let go. But anytime you get to taste that again and just feel it 100%, and there's nothing restricting your movement, and you can just throw like you're a little kid, oh man, it's so much fun. So if he's there right now, I can imagine he's pretty happy with it.
And the reason, obviously, that they don't like give them out like they used to is because they realize it just masks something that's there, or it can. So you might be pitching through something when they want you to feel that discomfort, to know that's your body responding to tell you, hey, we got to back down a little bit or whatever. But if you do it on a minimal or a conservative basis, it can just help you get the inflammation down again. So is the way it's supposed to work. But
I assume they gave him an MRI before they just started injecting it too. So if there's nothing major in there and it's just been bothering him for a long time, you're not afraid to do it. But there's also something, it breaks down the tissue. Every time you inject that in there, it does something to the tissue where it weakens it. And I mean, I know Moilo had an amount you can't even count. Like he probably couldn't even tell you how many shots he had, but he'd get them all the time. And then eventually it was like, hey, there's just nothing. You don't have an arm anymore, bud. So he had to have all his surgeries he had.
Well, it's like a lot of football players, man. They get shot up at halftime so they can keep playing. I mean, get ankles, knees shot up. I mean, and they just keep playing. But that builds up, and they end up retiring at 30 and they can't walk, Yeah.
So, I've experienced it because I took so many. I took a lot of Voltaren when I was pitching. And Voltaren, same thing. After 2 or 3 days, getting all that inflammation out of you, you're able to just keep chucking. And it's like you said, though, it's if there's some kind of damage in there and you're masking it to where you don't feel it, you're just eventually making that problem bad enough where it's you're not, the anti-inflammatory is not going to work anymore. And then since I've retired, I've relied on that so much that my body actually doesn't fight inflammation very well anymore, because it's like, where's my Voltaren? It's like I want to go shoot hoops with my kid. My knees are killing me. My body's like, we're going to need some pills, bud. So it's something that it's a position I think teams have gotten smart and realized they don't want to keep just finding ways to get guys on the field. They want them on the field healthy.
Right. And that's why you see guys get shut down nowadays, and they're out longer than they used to be and that kind of thing, because they've invested so much money, especially these pitchers. They can't afford that for them to do something far worse by just pushing a guy. So it's not like it used to be. Just shoot it up and keep going.
I miss those days. You feel tough when you do it. Yeah, just shoot me up.
I bet, man. Like, cut me, Mick.
Yeah, throw me back out there.
So yeah, he said the shoulder's been bothering him a couple years, man. And this was the first time it's really been smooth for a while. But you get used to working around stuff or pitching with stuff, and it takes a while to get loose or whatever, and you don't really notice it because it's just a gradual thing.
Yeah. And a lot of those injuries, like the shoulder's been bothering me for years, or this has been bothering me for years. It's not necessarily that it's bothering him in the game.
Right.
It's like my elbow. My elbow
next
bothered
day,
me.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, my elbow bothered me for 4 or 5 years before I had the Tommy John surgery. On and off. There'd be 2 months where it just hurt every day. But once you're fully like got that lather and you kind of break through that first session of throwing and you threw earlier in the day and kind of break things up. Once you're fully sweaty and, full adrenaline and you're in the game, you're not feeling it. It's not restricting you. But what that does do is it keeps you from practicing the way that you pitch. So if he thinks his four-seamer is better now, he's probably able to actually work on it and get through it when he's not fully at 100%. Because when you'd feel is when you're at 60, 70, 80% warming up and doing all that stuff. And if he's not feeling it at all ever, then he's able to throw free all the time. That's when you can really work on stuff.
For those who might not be following the game today, the Braves are on their only overnight trip. They used to always take an overnight trip from Orlando where they go down to West Palm, stay overnight, play the Cardinals one day, the Marlins the next day. Well, they're still doing that overnight trip only because MLB does the scheduling for spring training. If the Braves had their druthers, they would stay, on the west side of Florida and commute, an hour or less basically to all the places other than like Tampa and Clearwater and Dunedin, but those aren't much further. But anyway, they would not do this trip if it was up to them. But they're over there. But you'll see hardly any regulars in that lineup because they weren't going to make the veterans and even the young veterans, established guys, drive, take a bus across the state and spend overnight in a hotel. So as a result, you have a few of the projected main guys, or a couple, like Vaughn Grissom. But for the most part, it's all guys fighting for jobs or minor leaguers and all that. And they jumped all over the Mets early, man. They're up 6-0 in the seventh inning. And I think the one thing, really, the couple of good things you could take from this, I know it's just a spring training game, so you can't take a lot, but the Mets started Carrasco, and Eli White hit a 2-run homer off him. Eli White's one of the guys competing for left field. And I really was been impressed with him. He's a really fit guy, a pretty big guy, put together and can run, man. He's a really good defensive outfielder. And if he hits it all, he's got a shot. He's got a real shot. And another guy, Kevin Pillar, is one of those guys that's competing for that. He's over there. He signed a minor league contract. He's over there. He's looked pretty good early in camp. Luplo, guy that they thought really had a good shot, he's been bothered early on by an oblique strain, so he hasn't played yet. So some of the other fourth and fifth outfielder guys have looked pretty good, and that's really a good sign for Eli White to go over there and do that off Carrasco, not off some double A pitcher that you're not going to see all season. So Vaughn Grissom continues to play well. I've really been impressed with him so far. He's hitting about 550 so far. It's just spring. You're not going to get carried away, but he's hitting the ball hard. He's hitting the ball.
Seen him in the field?
Yeah, he's looked okay. He hadn't got a lot of balls. Nothing's really jumped out, but he's handled the routine stuff and looked fine. And in the drills, he looks fine. I mean, it's not the super quick movements that you might see from some shortstops because he's like 6'4", 6'3", and long, but he's smooth. He's a lot smoother than he was a year ago. You can really tell he's worked with Wash so much because he's really his movements look much more natural now, whereas before are much more fundamentally strong. Whereas before, I think he was working more on natural talent, athleticism.
Yeah.
And you saw a few careless mistakes last year at second base where he tried to maybe backhand a ball he didn't need to, or tried to one-hand a ball. He's much more fundamentally sound now. And, so far he looks fine out there when he's taking ground balls with Arcia and Shoemake. They all look fine out there. It's not like he goes, you don't look at him and go, he looks rough out there. So we'll see. But so far he looks fine. And obviously people forget how good a hitter he is because after that great start last year, the first couple of weeks, pitchers, teams adjusted to him, exploited, his aggressiveness, that kind of thing, because he doesn't draw many walks. But he ended up with really strong numbers for his first 5 weeks in the majors with like no time above A ball hardly. And his bat to ball skills are great. He's going to hit. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that at all with him.
He launched one over the monster in his first game, my God, after getting called up and stuck into a second base role that he'd hardly played compared to his experience at shortstop in the minors.
Yeah, you're not look. I don't think. I mean, you're looking for him to be solid at the position. If he hits like that, I mean,
just make the routine plays, make all the ones you're supposed to make. Maybe make an occasional spectacular play, but he ain't going to make a lot of them like Dansby made. But I think he can make all the routine ones, and that's all that counts. So the drop off is not big. Cause I mean, he might be I think he'll be a more consistent hitter than Dansby. He might not hit 25 to 30 homers like Dansby, but I think you look at his OBP and that kind of thing. I think he might be a better all around hitter than Dansby pretty quickly, all around, and as far as consistency.
Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, it's going to be tough to replace what. I think even comparing him to him or saying he's not this that Dansby was, he's not. It's not necessarily a knock on him. Dansby was a pretty easy player for me to appreciate.
Yeah,
he was a pretty damn valuable player.
Yeah, and he took a while to get to even do what he did too.
Yeah,
I mean, defensively early on, Dansby was not great. I mean, he was good, but he wasn't great. He made a lot of mistakes early and didn't hit. It was a very streaky hitter. He was a streaky hitter even last year, but when you're hitting 25, 30 homers and getting some big knocks,
it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, the overall numbers can be overlooked a little bit. So, Ozuna, the left fielder they'd love to have look good this spring so they can play him and Rosario out there and not have to DH him so much because I know they want to use the catcher to DH a lot. But Ozuna's not looked very good so far. I haven't thought he struck out a lot. But we'll see. It's really early, and he's 0 for 3 so far today. He's one of the guys that did have to make that trip over there today. Tells you where kind of he stands. Man. He's in no position to complain.
Oh, there's some harsh realities when you get you like I remember picture day one year. I was a non-roster invitee and I didn't even have a jersey or anything. I was like, shit, I guess I'm probably not making this team. I just had a random jersey with a blank, no number on the back to wear on picture day. Or going on those trips when you have to go on those trips, or you can be a guy with 6 to 8 years in the big leagues and you're pitching after some rookie that had a good 2 months in the big leagues last year.
Yeah.
So he's in front of you and it's like, all right. Or you're in group C or D with the pitchers.
Yeah.
You're rolling around with all the minor leaguers and you're just looking over at the other field with all the big leaguers having fun. All right, I'm not making this team.
Yeah. I mean, he had to look at that roster where they put it up yesterday and gone, okay, it's Vaughn Grissom, who's for all intents and purposes a rookie. I mean, he's obviously you're going to take him instead of Arcia just because of the experience factor. But the only guy that's really experienced and established that's gone over there is Ozuna. It's the guy that led the NL in homers and RBIs a few years ago.
It tells you this is your last shot here.
Your last couple of years have not been ideal, Marcel.
We don't care if you're happy here or not anymore. We want to take this look at you, and this is how we're going to get it. So you're coming.
That's a good way to put it. I mean, we don't care if you're happy here because, frankly, we're not real happy to have you, but we need you to produce because we got to pay you. So you're going. You need to show something. And who's to say if he completely fell on his face this spring and one of these other guys steps forward, and Rosario's looked pretty good so far. Not great, but pretty good. A lot better than last year. You can tell the vision has really affected him last year. But if he were to step up, like Wright steps up, who's to say the Braves wouldn't eat a big chunk of that contract and trade him for, if somebody would just take him, in a few $1 million a year.
Yeah. The thing I don't know about him is I don't know how well I don't know how he's liked in the clubhouse.
He's okay. He's fine in the clubhouse
and all that.
Yeah, he's fine. He's not what people think.
That turns into a big thing.
Right. He's not been the distraction that people think and understandably think, because you would think a guy that's been arrested twice and caused as much consternation and talk and online chatter and all that would be a huge distraction, but he really hasn't been, just because the clubhouse is so good. And to his teammates, he's not a jackass, Yeah.
No, that's the thing is, I mean, if you're working hard and treating people right.
Right. And he's okay with his teammates. They are okay with him. I mean, that's not to excuse what he's done off the field because there's no excuse for that. But yeah, he's fine in the clubhouse. So if he wasn't, they would have got rid of him, even if they had to eat the thing. If he was a jackball and stop him, what he's done.
Jackball.
So, and then the other good thing out of today's game was Kobe Allard, strong 3 innings against the Mets, and no hits, man. 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. His first outing was just okay. That was the first game of the spring that ended on the controversial pitch timer violation.
Yeah.
He started that game. This was obviously much, much better. And that they really like to see that because he's a guy they're going to count on to make some starts this year. They had 11 starters last year. The Braves are, without announcing it like the Mets, they really are going to use a 6-man rotation for a lot of the year because whenever they get a chance to rest a guy, they think a guy needs to skip a day or two, they're going to bring a guy up like Kobe Allard, who's got options. So we're going to see him during the year. It's just a matter of how well he pitches, probably how many starts he does make.
Well, he faced they had Pham, McNeil, Lindor, Alonso, Escobar, Canna.
Great lineup.
Yeah, they had some starters and some studs in there today. I mean, that's the first thing I always look at. It's normally, if a guy has a good start at home, you're more worried like, oh, they sent their B squad on the road. But when you go to a team's, home facility, you're going to get their guys they want playing for them that year. So that's the first thing I look for. And they had some studs in there.
Really encouraging. Yeah, I talked to him the other day. He was so excited to come back to the Braves, man, get back in the mix here, as he said, because all the guys here are guys that he was drafted and came up with.
Yeah.
The Acuñas, the Max Frieds had been traded over here, Soroka, Mentor, all of them. I mean, he knows all these guys. So he's really comfortable from day one, which helps. And he obviously knows most of the coaching staff too, so including Snett. So we'll see, but he's only 25 years old still. I know he's been around a while, but he's a former first rounder. They took him higher than he should have gone in that draft because he was signable and they could use some money to sign other guys and sign him under slot. But he's obviously a guy with some experience who could really be really big as an extra starter.
Yeah, I like that he's had some experience because like for me, when you have a guy come into camp and he happens to be the guy throwing the best and he's got no time,
right?
How he's throwing the ball in spring training to me means nothing,
right?
The results
like Kyle Wright a couple springs.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to rely on. And then when you have a guy that's been in the big leagues and maybe he's struggled, but at least he's been in the big leagues, I have a lot more confidence in their good spring training transferring over.
And Ian Anderson, if anybody wants to take any positives out of his horrible outing, it's that he's never been good in spring training. And it hasn't been important in the past, but it is more important this year, obviously, because he's competing for the 5th spot. But I'm just saying I wouldn't draw too many conclusions on how he's pitched. I know that's hard. I know that's hard for people to accept, though, because he was so bad last year. You don't want to see him come out and struggle this year, but so far he has. The 5th starter job is not gotten off to the rip-roaring start that the Braves hoped those guys would come out with. Okay, Soroka shows up with a sore hamstring, strained it literally the day before driving down to report to camp. And he's not pitched yet the game. He's not been, he's been flat grounding it, making progress, but it's just slow. You know how hamstrings can be, and they want to be careful with him, obviously. They don't want him. He's the last guy you want favoring the other leg or whatever, because it's the opposite one.
Legs.
It's the opposite one of the Achilles.
Any imbalance in his lower half for me, I'm like, shut him down.
Right. Which is why I heard, which is why Snett made it pretty clear that it's probably not going to have enough time. Even like 3 days ago, he's already saying it's not going to be enough time for him to win that 5th starter job, probably. Because this is the guy that's made 3 starts in the last 3 years. And all those were in none since August 2020.
He doesn't have to win it. That's the way I look at it from him.
They just want him at some point.
I mean, if he gets called up in the middle of May, he can change the season.
Sure. And that would probably be more realistic. If he's ready to go, make some AAA starts early in the season and shows, that he
Dave, you're cutting out.
I'm not cutting out. It's this thing bleeding into.
Oh, something weird happened.
Game day. I got to turn it off. Hold on. Sorry about that. MLB Network did a thing this year. Let me find it. I got too many screens up. God damn it. Hold on. MLB Network in the past, if you had game day on, you there?
Yeah.
You could just shut it down. The game that you could silence it. But this year, because they don't want people skipping and not watching all their commercials, so it'll only work for like 5 minutes or whatever. Then it comes on like that obnoxiously in the middle of the thing. So let me just turn my sound down and I'll solve that problem. So even if it comes back on. All right. So the fifth starter, Job Soroka, shows up with a bad hamstring. He has not pitched yet. Ian Anderson goes out, and he and Bryce Elder both go out in their first outings and were not at all what you had hoped they would be, what you're looking for. You want one of those guys, any of them, to step forward. And there's plenty of time for it to happen, obviously. And that's the beauty of a normal length spring training like we're having this year instead of last year's 3.5 weeks where you really couldn't. I mean, you had to, guys, you had to make decisions quickly last year. This year is plenty of time. You notice Charlie hasn't even thrown yet. There's plenty of time for Charlie to make 5 starts, even if he just makes his first one this week. I mean, he can still make 5 starts, and that's all a guy like him needs to build up.
Yeah.
And same thing for Kyle Wright. There's still plenty of time for him to build up and be ready, like at least by the back end of maybe that first season opening trip. Because you can skip your one start. You have an off day, so you can have Max start 2 games before you would need Kyle to stop to pop in there like game 6. If there's no setbacks between now and then. But anyway, I'm just making a point that there's no rush, but you want one of those 5 starters obviously to step forward. And so far, not happening. Each of those guys go out for different reasons. Ian goes out and walks 3 guys, gave up 2 home runs, gave up 2 walks before the second home run, gave a home run up on the slider, which is the vaunted third pitch that he's honed since last year, and he felt pretty good about it, but he hung one and gave up a home run on a slider. Really struggled against the Twins. Didn't make it out of 2 innings. And he's hoping to come back and in the second start and apply what he learned, but apply the mistakes he made from that and move forward. But that's not a good sign, especially the walks, man. That just can't have him walking guys.
No, I don't think he has the overpowering stuff to get away with walking guys. He needs outs in the zone. But, it's tough. It's tough when it becomes a thing. Your struggles become a thing. Because one bad outing, anytime it happens, can, kind of kick up that here we go again. Oh, he didn't change anything. He's the same guy. You're still him. He's in a really tough spot to get out of. And it gets to the point where it's all mental.
Yeah.
And that's probably, the walks and things like that is whether you're afraid to give up runs, whether the control's just not there, whether you're trying to throw too hard. There's a lot of factors that can come into it, but it's mainly like for me, anytime I got into those ruts and, I finally ended my career with one I couldn't get out of. It was 2 years straight of, a couple good games and then fall off the cliff again, and it's really hard once it becomes a thing and in your own head, it's a thing. And you go out there and even all it can take is you face that first hitter and they just line drive one in the gap. And it's like, oh shit, I might struggle today. Then you start trying too hard and kind of like snowballs on you. But when you're going good and you're coming off a good season and blah, 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 the first guy hits a double in the gap and you're like, fuck it, I'm doing so good. It doesn't matter if I give up a run, so it's like you're going to be more relaxed and more likely to get out of it. During my good years, I would give up a leadoff double and I'd be like, all right, that guy's probably going to score. I don't care. And I'd just make pitches, and continue the inning. And sure enough, you get like an infield pop up and then a ground ball double play, and you get out of that inning, with no runs because you didn't stress it, you didn't try too hard, you didn't feel any pressure, and vice versa. When you're struggling and it's a thing, it's like you give up this leadoff double and it's like, oh shit, here we go again. I can't let this run score, or I'm having another bad outing. And how's that going to be perceived and read? And how am I going to feel about it? And all of a sudden you walk the next guy.
Yeah.
And then you give up a cheap hit and that run scores. And you walk another guy and all of a sudden it's a 4 spot and you suck again. And it's like all this work I put in, I'm not able to take it out there because of my mindset.
Yeah.
And it's momentum's such a big thing in baseball. I just think Ian has to find a way to get momentum back on his side so he can stop having these outings.
Before we discuss what Elder did in his start, another big bright spot early on, Dylan Dodd, the left-hander, in that first game of the year that ended in the controversial pitch timer clock ending. Dylan Dodd had a great outing in that one, pitched a couple of scoreless a couple of hitless, scoreless innings, no walks, and 4 strikeouts. Today against the Mets, the guy goes 2 1/3, 2 1/3, 3 hits, no walks again. And 4 strikeouts. So he's got 8 strikeouts in 4 1/3 innings with no walks so far, man. That's pretty impressive. This kid. I mean, he's a prospect, legit. And
I don't know anything about him.
Legit prospect, the kind of guy that could move up pretty quickly. The Braves have shown they will not hesitate to bring a guy up from AA, AAA with hardly any experience above, A ball if they think he can help them right away.
So he's a starter.
Yeah, but they're using him in a pen, obviously, this spring, and he'd be a great guy for middle. If they were to have an injury or someone struggle in that middle role, or they just wanted another guy maybe to pitch long early on when some starters aren't ready to go long, maybe he's a guy that you consider. But he's got a former position player who's now a pitcher, and he's legit. He's a legit prospect. He's a 3rd rounder in 2021. But a college guy to Missouri State. So he's 24, almost 25. He'll be 25 in June. So it's not one of those guys you got to have baby and wait, for another 3 years for, that kind of thing.
It's go time. What 25, you want to be starting to make a name for yourself.
Yeah. And since he moved over from hitting to full-time pitching, man, he's really his career has really started to ascend. And you didn't see this coming this soon, but last year, he had he struggled at Rome, but in AA last year, he had 9 starts, 3.11 ERA, 55 strikeouts with 13 walks and 46 1/3 innings in AA. After 91 strikeouts, 17 walks in 89 innings in Rome in A-ball. Gave up too many homers in A-ball, or too many hits, but the strikeouts to walks is outstanding. And for the year last year, you look at 153 strikeouts, 31 walks, and 142 innings at 3 levels: high A, AA, AAA. 1 start in AAA. So he's only got 1 start above AA, 1 game. But again, at that age, if he's ready, he's ready.
I didn't notice it when I was coming up. I didn't notice any difference between AA and AAA.
Right, especially
from AAA
nowadays.
was a big jump, but back then it was like the AAA guys were just AA guys that were too old for AA. There wasn't like this big jump. So not having a lot of experience above AA never.
Right.
If it's an A-ball guy, it's kind of scary because anything that AA is kind of a separator for a lot of guys. But
that's the big jump now, right? AA.
Yeah, single A to AA. High A to AA is where a lot of guys find out they're not that good, or shit, I'm better than I thought.
Well, the Braves, like a lot of teams, even though their AAA team is closer than most, it's only a half hour away, an hour away from the new park. They for years have had most of their best prospects in AA, and AAA has been the older guys.
Yep.
The journeymen, the guys you bring up, that are on minor league deals, you can bring up in an emergency,
weeks, right? Guys,
with some exceptions, obviously. I mean, if a young prospect is blocked or there's not a position ready for him, then they bring him up AAA and have him there.
Yeah.
So you need to keep bringing him up. So, but I mean, look at last year. Harris and Vaughn Grissom both came from AA.
Yeah. They didn't struggle.
Did not struggle, especially Harris. So, and Harris, but barely was even a AA. So less like third of the season. So anyway, so Dylan Dodd, he's opened some eyes early on, man. He's been impressive.
Yeah. You do it left-handed, man. You could climb the ladder quick. Having good stuff left-handed, having some balls and being able to pitch. And if he can handle going into the pen.
Yeah.
A lot of guys don't want to give up the starting pitching dream, but you can get to big leagues quick as a lefty reliever.
The other 5th starter candidate, Bryce Elder, he made those 5 consecutive strong starts late last season. It looked like he turned a corner. Obviously, he looked really good. He had that no-hitter deep into the game against the Nats. But all 5 of those were against the Marlins and Nationals, who were not world beaters last year. Especially the Nats at the end. They had nobody left hardly after they traded Soto. They had a couple of good young players, but that's not the stars that they had before. Still, it was impressive. Those 5 outings, he had a 1.65 ERA, 181 opponent's average. And the most important thing was after he had got demoted, after pitching 5 early games, 4 starts, he got sent to AAA. And that was where it finally got through to him. You got to trust your stuff, even though you don't throw that hard. Those strikes, let him put it in play. And once he started doing that, it was night and day for him. So in those 5 starts after he came back, he had 33 strikeouts, 9 walks, 32 in the third innings. The first 5 games he pitched last year, 5.480 or a 394 opponent's average, 14 walks, 14 strikeouts, 21 in a third. So he was just like completely different pitcher when he came back up. So the only good part about his first start of the spring against the Yankees was he still was throwing strikes. He's letting them put it in play. Unfortunately, the game started with 3 straight singles and a grand slam. But he still didn't walk guys.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes in spring training, it's tough too, depending on which guys you face. But
a couple of ground ball hits, singles.
Give up some cheap singles. You're throwing a lot of fastballs. They know you're throwing a lot of fastballs and strikes, and it's weird. You have guys that are just running into things, swinging at everything in spring training. It's almost goes against you to be throwing too many strikes.
Yeah,
because guys are, especially young guys. I mean, it's really tough to pitch late in the games.
Yeah.
And you come in and you're trying to get ahead of guys and you think you're going to get this free strike. And it's a dude that's, he might get 3 at-bats this spring training. If he sees a fastball, he's trying to hit it 500 feet.
Yeah.
They string some of those guys together and all of a sudden you're sitting there like, this is my first outing. I'm going to pound the zone. And all of a sudden you give up 4 runs and you suck. And it's like, I didn't even get anything out of that because I didn't even get to get deep enough into account to work on anything. Spring training is just, for me, it's tough to read any outcome. But if your goal going into the game is I'm not going to walk anybody, I'm going to fill up the zone.
Yeah.
And you give up 4 runs, it's almost like you have to be bigger than the results and say like, okay, I accomplished what I was trying to do. But at some point you get sick of giving up hits and runs and, that's bad for your confidence. So kind of.
And if you can't read a whole lot in a normal spring, well, imagine this spring with the pitch clock. I mean, everybody's getting adjusted to the pitch clock. The hitters, everybody. Some guys, even some guys that were in AAA a lot last year where they use the pitch clock are feeling rushed because, they're trying to deal with the whole major league thing and they're taught to slow the game down if it feels like it's and who was it? One of the it was Allard, Kobe Allard, because he's gone back and forth for 5 years basically in AAA in the majors. And he's worked with pitch clock a lot, but he said it kind of goes against everything you're taught when you're coming up is, okay, if you're in the big leagues, if the game starts getting fast, take a deep breath, step off the mound. You can't do that.
Nope.
You can't call timeout. You can't step off the mound. It's the umpire's going to go, that's a ball, So you got 7 seconds with nobody on, 15 seconds with nobody on, 20 seconds with a runner on and that's from the time the pitcher catches the ball to throw the next pitch. And that can get up on you in a hurry.
It was ugly for me I watched the spring training game the other day while I was at the barber shop or something. They had the game on and seeing that clock up there, it feels gross. I don't like it. I mean, it's like, it goes against what baseball is, what pitching is,
right?
Like pitching, it's all about being in control. And it's unfortunate that so many guys took that a little too far to the point where they're like, all right, 38 seconds between pitches. Like, I know you're in control, but
gently.
You're boring the shit out of everybody. I get that, but it does. I never would have struggled with it, but it made me feel anxious on TV, just watching it on TV. Like, shit, he's only got 4 seconds left.
Yeah.
You got to hurry up. That whole thing. And, one of the things that guys struggle with the most is when the game starts speeding up on you and you'll see a guy start throwing a lot of balls. You watch them. They're barely coming set. They're leaking through their delivery. Their arms late because they're already rushing so much. So that's like the sign that the game's already speeding up on them so much.
Yeah.
And now you add in this clock factor. It's like you're even more likely to have the game unravel on you when you rush. And that's almost part of the game now. You have to rush.
And the pitchers were telling me the only problem they've seen so far, because pitchers, they'll adjust. Everybody will adjust. That's why they're doing it all spring, so they can see the clock up there. I don't think the clocks are going to be as prominently placed when the season starts, but right now they are right there in your face, hanging from the facade behind.
It's ugly.
Home plate, and then in center field too, right by the batter's eye, so you can't miss it, catcher or pitcher. But I had a couple of pitchers tell me the only real problem they've had is if you want to change, if you want to shake off your catcher with PitchCom. All of a sudden, it takes longer with PitchCom to change the pitch than it did with just signal. So you might, some might revert to using fingers, at least when there's not a runner on second base, than they do because it's longer with PitchCom because you got to push those buttons. location and the pitch, So that's what some guys are working out. Guys that tend to shake off catchers, they're having some problems doing it and all that in 15 seconds and still doing your delivery. And it's where it's going to be nice having catchers that they trust too, that whatever they put down. And the Braves have got a couple of those. And unlike having a guy that maybe you have a veteran pitcher with a young catcher that really hasn't developed that relationship or that trust.
Sometimes you have to shake like 5 times.
Those guys are going to be they're going to have a problem. I can see some young catchers having a problem who haven't developed that trust with pitchers.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you literally have to shake. Yeah, you want fastball in, they call fastball away, and you go through 3 other pitches before they throw down fastball in.
Yeah.
They're sitting here. I can't imagine, like for me, having to this like a distraction factor of there's this fucking thing in my ear beeping and I'm trying to get this and there's a fucking clock up there.
Yes.
I could see myself having some meltdowns with all this shit going on. We're going to take some.
We're going to see some panic throws because especially in a tight situation with a runner on base, the guy's going to be like, I can't get, and he's just going to throw. You might even see some guy to get hurt, making an awkward, movement, trying to hurry. But
I don't know if I could do it.
They're going to have to get used to it for sure, man, because they said they're going to call them, and they have so far. They probably even like that game, the first game, the Braves game that ends on the pitch clock violation. That umpire, Allard, was saying it was like he was quick. He had a quick trigger. It's almost like they've been told, do it at the exact instance because they got to learn. We want to show them that we're serious about this rather than giving them an extra second or two in the 9th inning, with the game close.
It's better than it happening during the season when it actually counts for something.
So maybe in the regular season, maybe they would not have called that right then because, they were like, it was so close. The Braves hitter, Cal Conley, prospect, is in the box. It's in the box. And the catcher, I still don't know whether he deked him intentionally or not. I think he did. But the catcher's standing, but his feet are in the box. And that's all that he has to have him in the catcher's box, his feet. He doesn't have to be crouched or look like he's ready. The catcher's looking down at his pitch comm on his wrist. He's acting like, there's a problem. I'm not ready. So Conley's in the box, but he's not looking when they get to 8 seconds. He's not looking at the pitcher because he's looking at the catcher. He's kind of distracted. So his head's down for that instant. And the umpires say at 8 seconds, you've got to be looking at the pitcher. So even though Conley's there and they can't quick pitch him yet because the catcher's still standing, they called it Conley and it ends the game. And he started running to first because he thought that the pitcher was a violation. He thought, I'm getting a game-winning bases loaded walk. And instead it was a game-ending strikeout. It was the most awkward thing. It was like, good Lord, if this happened in a regular season game, much less in a playoff game. Can you even imagine that happening in a postseason game?
No. No. I remember a check swing call last year or 2 years ago, maybe. It was a Giants game. And the guy probably didn't go.
Right.
Or he probably went. But in my head, I'm thinking he better spin around 2 times before I end a playoff game on that, questionable of a check swing. Like it needs to be obvious. It needs to be a full hack that if he connected, it goes over the fence type of check swing.
Yeah.
You can't end the game on that questionable of a call. It needs to be 100%. To have a game end on a batter not in the box or a pitcher. Yeah. I've watched this stuff and I'm like, it's too much to keep track of for me.
There's a lot.
I want the ball and I want to throw it. You start giving me all this other crap.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to focus on the hitter and what I'm supposed to be throwing. We've seen walk-off balks, obviously.
Yeah.
I've covered a few of those.
It's pretty easy to control that one though.
Right. And the other thing is I'm thinking, and if this happens in a regular season, and I should have asked somebody, but I haven't yet. Can they appeal that and go to the clock and look at where the clock is when they called it? I don't know.
I know I don't want to sit through that shit.
Good Lord, if they can appeal it, you're going to see some fans
through a delay over the speed up rule.
You're going to see some fans throwing shit on the field like they did with that terrible infield fly ruling the win against the Braves. We're going to see a few of those incidents if a game actually ends on that, or even just a big play that turns a game around, like a bases loaded walk brings in a guy in a tight game on a pitch clock violation. So it's interesting. There's a lot. I like the only thing I love about it, obviously, and the fans are going to love about it while they might hate a rule and go against them, the pace is great.
Is it?
Because the games, these 3.5, especially remember the Yankee Red Sox games that all went like 4 hours for a while there. These games are all going 2.5, and it's spring training where you're making 5-6 pitching changes.
Well, if it
they're going 2.5 hours.
If it's doing that,
it's working.
There's nothing like a fast baseball game.
It is
like
quick.
Travel day or something like that.
It's so noticeable, man. The amount of dead time is cut down just dramatically. It's dramatic.
Okay. I'll get on board with it if it's saving that much time.
Oh, it's going to save the time for sure. And then the other thing, the rules that go hand in hand with this and the number of the limited to 2 pickoff throws and the bigger bases. What I've seen so far, even though we don't have a ton of stolen bases yet, is teams are going to really be aggressive. And the Braves are one of those teams. You're seeing guys like if a pitcher makes the first pickoff throw, you're seeing guys get a lot more aggressive. If he makes a second pickoff throw, they're going to be going.
See, so what I don't understand.
And then he better throw them out or it's a balk.
So you basically have one pickoff throw. Because if you burn the second one, can they just lead off halfway to second base?
No, because you can still pick him off. But you got to do it.
You have to get him.
You have to get it.
Or it's a balk.
And that's why I wrote about how the Braves have a great weapon. And that was a genius trade to trade for him right now, Sean Murphy, because he's got a cannon. And not only does he have a cannon arm, but it's so accurate. Yeah. So we're going to see more back picks than we've seen in forever. I mean, because it's unlimited. He can back pick 10 times in one. It's to the point where if a guy does it so much, maybe they'll have to do a back pick rule, but I hope not. The Braves hope not, because Sean Murphy is going to be able to back pick, and he's got such an accurate arm. Like a lot of catchers, it's risky. You're going to throw it in the right field corner, the guy's going to be at third base.
Well, Sean Murphy, first baseman needs to be able to catch it.
Right. And Olsen, last year notwithstanding, has been really good about catching balls.
He just had like 4 weird times last year where
he's real familiar with Murphy, obviously, because he played with him in Oakland,
right?
So he knows what to expect. But Murphy throws a cannon down there, throws a bullet down there, and that's why they've had the infielders already work on catching his throws, and they have not done that in the past with catchers, specifically on catching throws.
Like, hey, it's coming.
It's coming live, and be ready. Because it's going to get on you. So it's going to be interesting, man. It's going to open up a whole different dynamics and strategies, that you better use. It's like Sal Fasano told him, we got a weapon now. We better use it.
Yeah.
Because he said, when that ball's in a guy's hands, to me, it's a weapon. You're a weapon. If you have the ball in your hands, and he's a guy with a cannon arm that throws really accurately. So you're going to see him throwing to first. You're going to see him throwing to third, He might be back picking guys at third. We don't know. Or second. Guy gets a big lead. You got a couple of quick guys there, especially Ozzie is so tiny and quick.
Yeah.
I think you might see Ozzie get over there in a hurry and try to back pick a guy that's getting a little careless at second. So it's going to be interesting.
I'd have to, I guess, unless you know this, but I wonder how an inside move would affect those, because it gets really tricky when you can't. You can only pick the second twice.
Right.
Like an inside move, that would probably count as a pickoff attempt.
Every time you step off the base, it's a disengagement.
Got it.
Whether you throw it or not. If you call timeout, yeah, that's a disengagement.
So you just get 2 disengagements.
Yeah, per batter. But if the batter advances, you get 2 more. It resets. Right. But and you're going to have to, and the other thing where it's going to be really beneficial to have veteran experienced catchers is the pitcher is not going to be able to stop the clock as it's running down. If he's like scrambling going, oh man, we're messed up. There's 1 second left. I don't know what I'm throwing. He can't call timeout, but the catcher can go out there.
But it burns a mound visit.
Yeah. You've got like 5 mound visits. The catcher. So if you got to have a catcher that's tuned to that and is ready. But if the catcher calls timeout, he can go out there. He might save your pitcher a few times in a game. And they give you an extra mound visit in the 9th inning.
I'd like to see, if they have all 2.5-hour games this year and it does nothing to grow the game. If they could just be like, all right, we're shit canning all this.
It's not going to happen.
I know it's not.
Yeah.
But
the only way it would be if the only way I could see, because it's all money, it's always about money. The only way I could see it working is if you had an outcry, you didn't have increases in fan interest ratings, attendance, or anything like that, and at the same time you were unable to fit as many commercials into a game.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really matter because those that fit in pitching changes and between innings time didn't get smaller, of course.
Right.
They weren't going to touch that.
Right.
Or postseason when the between innings is even longer. So that's the only way I could see it, is if somehow you weren't able to get as many commercials in, but it really shouldn't matter. Although some of these networks have started doing the commercial within the game, you know what I mean? Where they show, and they could do that before when a pitcher, especially if a slow pitcher, you can't do that now.
No, the pitch might be coming and they're still talking about,
because those are like 10 to 15 seconds. And they do that quick thing while it's like a picture-in-picture thing.
So-and-so's lawn care.
So if some teams were making a lot of money off those, they might have to cut those out. They might raise hell, but I just can't see them going back unless it just really has a lot of ramifications that they did not want. But they want the faster games, and they want more offense. So I know those other rules are going to stay in place because there's going to be a lot more running, which I'm glad, because I've hated seeing base running almost
just
removed.
No, it's
outs.
like, he's a great base runner. It's just a guy that can go first to third now, or
takes
he
routes.
Gets a good read on a shallow fly ball when he's on second.
We're not going to get 120 stolen bases like Vince Coleman and Ricky Henderson.
Right.
We're going to see some 40 to 50 stolen base guys now, which we haven't seen in a long time. And pitch outs. It's like Ian was telling me the other day. Pitchers used to have to do certain things, and in the past few years, they really haven't. Like pitch outs have
nobody's running.
Become extinct.
Yeah.
Now you're going to have to be able to do that more.
I can't. It just blows my mind that an inch or whatever on the bases, a few inches on the bases would change the game that much.
It's 4.5 inches.
Yeah, 4.5 inches.
That much. And think how many bang bang plays there are where we have to go look at the camera and they arrive at exactly the same time.
Well, it's just like first base, like putting first base at 90 feet. Whoever came up with that. Every single routine ground ball to shortstop, they beat him by half a step.
Yeah.
It's like,
and a lot of that is that. Yeah. I mean,
the timing of it, but
right. And guys work towards that. Yeah. It's almost like dumb luck that they did pick that distance but you got to think if it was 88, we'd still have the same number of bang bang plays.
There'd be more hits though, because they'd have to play closer to try to get them,
Yeah. But like we talked about, I think we mentioned before, what people haven't talked about is, with the bases,
the first baseman being closer to
he's going to be closer to the throw.
Yeah.
And like Freddie, how he extended a little further than most because he did the splits, and like Vlad Jr. does the splits too, like Freddie used to. Vlad's doing them still. But Olsen, those are guys that are already long armed. I mean, you're going to add another inch to that, and on a bang bang play, that can make a difference.
Yeah.
So
that'll be a fun thing to watch for me and just see.
Yeah.
I always appreciate.
Yeah. I don't think just the shorter distance between the bases themselves would have made a huge difference. But I think with the restriction on the pickoff throws, and the clock and the shorter bases, I think it's all going to add to really make a difference. It's going to be noticeable. And it's exciting watching guys steal bases,
It's going to be like the ballsiest play in baseball is to go for that third pick.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Like if a dude does that in a big situation, and the guy's getting a huge lead at third base and Max is pitching and Max knows I might get his ass, I'm going for it. That's a ballsy play. And
Max is a guy could do it because look at his percentage, kind of like Julio Teheran was. But Max is really high percentage of pickoffs.
Yeah.
So
Julio, his was a balk, but it was so good or so effective. It'd be like if I was Julio, I'd almost try to burn the first two to get him to take a huge lead and not have shown him my good one yet. See if I could get him.
But guys are obviously going to learn that real quick if Max is daking him or whatever. But I was talking to somebody about how having a catcher with a great pickoff, a back pick throw, what it's going to do is shrink that secondary lead that guys are going to get against some inferior catchers. You're going to see some huge secondary leads when a pitcher's already used 2 pickoff throws, just daring that pitcher to throw over there.
Yep.
You know, there's gonna be some big secondary leads.
Yeah. We haven't even talked about there being no shift. I mean, that's definitely going to affect offense too.
Oh man, we saw that in the very first game. Matt Olson's first AB in the first inning.
It's ground ball in the hole.
Yeah, and I think it was a Codify showed him hitting a ground ball last year, which became a routine ground out to the guy stationed in shallow right field. He hits it to the exact same spot this year. Routine single right through. Nobody got close to it. Dude, him and Freddie and a few other guys, obviously, but those are the 2 that I'm most familiar with recently.
Freddie might hit 400.
I could see him getting another 12, 15 hits in the season. Can't you?
More than that.
Yeah, I'm just being conservative because I'm in my head. It seemed like there was always one like every game or 2 that they hit into the shift.
Yeah. No, I think that's going to be the biggest change in the game overall are those top spin hard ground balls. Not to mention that if you hadn't adapted or changed your approach to avoid that, as a lefty.
Yeah.
But
sure.
How many more it would be. But now it's like, I got free reign to pull the ball hard. I think guys will be a lot less afraid to just sell out and pull the ball because a lot of times when you're trying to drive the ball and pull it and you're a little early, that's when you miss. You still barrel the ball, but you top spin it. And you hit that hard ground ball to the left of the second baseman.
Yeah.
Or those top spin line drives that you'd see the second baseman or whoever was out there, third baseman playing shallow right, those balls that they'd catch, that nobody should ever be there, based on what baseball's been up until the shift started.
Yeah.
I think it's 25, 30 hits a year minimum.
That I was about to say, can you imagine Freddie adding 30 hits to some of the years, the averages he's had?
I'd say 50. I mean, one every 3 games. You don't think Freddie hits one of those?
I know he did.
Every 3 games?
I know he did. I covered him. I know he did, and I know Matt Olson did a lot of them last year. But Freddie, I know he had years where he had 25 to 30 hits stolen. I know he did.
What did he hit last year? He hit 330, 327.
It's going to be interesting to watch, man. I mean, maybe the team though brings the second baseman over further and gives him that up the middle a little more. But Freddie can hit it up the middle.
Having 3 infielders on one side, because then that was what the shift did was, and Freddie was a back control guy, but Freddie didn't hit ground balls to the left side.
Right.
He hits line drives to the left side.
Right.
So they're giving up nothing defending the left side against him. Once in a while he's late or something or hits a weak one that scrambles through, but for the most part, his ground balls are all to the right side. And it's just because of his bat path. And then left side, it's hard line drives that you weren't going to make a play on anyways. You throw 3 guys over there on the right side of the infield. Yeah, I mean, that's 30% less guys on the.
I haven't heard anybody yet respond to that. What you showed some teams that already figured out how you can move the left fielder over.
Yeah.
And bring him in. I haven't heard anybody respond to that if that's going to be legal or what. But I could see the infield against Freddie lining up something like having the third baseman over where shortstop was, have shortstop just to the left of the base.
Yeah, and then let the second baseman run way over there. But you're still giving a huge, a big hole on his pull side.
Right, and then have the second baseman shade over towards first base.
Right.
And then as the pitch is thrown, you have your shortstop run over after, because they're gonna if guys start running before the pitch is thrown, they're gonna call them. It's gonna be an infraction. But as the pitch
what's the penalty for that?
Good question. It's pretty severe. You don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's awarded a walk, but it might be. It might be awarded the base.
It could be like a catcher's interference, like when you hit the glove and it's a free single.
Yeah. But I could see them doing that and trying to get over that. But Freddie, as you know, in BP, all he does is try to hit line drives over the shortstop's head. That's his BP. It's what he does for most of BP. So,
it's his misses though. His misses, or when he goes for the pull, that he hits that shallow top spin line drive or pulled ground ball to the right side. He had 199 hits last year. He could get 250 this year.
Even if he gets 225, imagine how much he was at. Even if he has 15 hits, the average goes up so much. Yeah. Olson doesn't have that kind of back control to hit it to the left side like Freddie does. Olson hits so many balls into that right there, just kind of helpless, and and a lot of times he'd miss one and roll over to that, but he hits it hard enough that if there's nobody there, he's going to get through.
I think about it a lot with B-Mac's career because the averages he had early on in his career, And then they started shifting on him. And it's so funny because guys are like trying to fix their swing, figuring out what's wrong with them.
Yep.
Yeah, they're like, fuck, I don't know what's going on. They're making all these adjustments. You're like, no, you were hitting 330 when you came up. Because
B-Mac was a 300 hitter, man, when he came up. And he was hitting line drives to that guy shifted over there too. Line drives, right to him.
Yep.
And those are instant base hit without a shift. I mean, that was where he hit him all the time.
It was like 2011. I think it was 2012. I remember playing this series against the Cubs. And we were hitting lasers up the middle. And it's like, you're on the bench. You see the ball off the bat. And they were close games. And we thought we got the go-ahead hit. It happened like 3 or 4 times in the series. We thought we got this big hit, and the second baseman or shortstop was just standing on second base catching it. We're like, what the hell is this? And I remember that was around the time that the shift started really coming into play. And that's when B-Mac's average went from at least 270 every year down to 230, 256.
And people wondered what was wrong with him, but they didn't really think about
No, that's probably the hardest thing is righties didn't have to deal with that.
Nope. Never.
Nobody was taking the second baseman and
nobody
in the 6 hole.
I mean, if people had known when they're raising their kids what the shifts were going to do, there'd have been a lot of people who had them hit right-handed instead of left,
or hit like Freddie
when they're young enough to be able to hit from either side.
Yeah,
and they want to naturally hit left. No, hit right. I mean, the shift did that much.
I'm interested to see how Joey Gallo does this year. A lot of lefties. Olson's one of them. Freddie, I'm just curious. I know he's going to rake either way, but there's quite a few guys at those.
Yeah.
It's like those top spin singles too. The top spin hard ground ball that kind of picks up speed as it goes.
Right.
It gets through the dirt. Well, it gets through the dirt and then it hits the grass, and it's just like easy for that guy that's standing out in right.
Yeah, he just feels a routine. Boom.
It's easy. There's no bad hop. The speed doesn't matter. Like it just eats it up, and you throw the guy out. And majority of the big slugging left-handers aren't burners on the bases, so they're not beating those balls
Olson
out.
Can't run for shit. I mean, he's slow, so he got even more.
He needs it to get through.
Yeah, he got even more of them robbed.
Yeah, they could play 5 steps deeper on him.
Yep. So I think you're going to really see Olson's average go up this year, like a lot. And he's looked good by the way so far. He's looked good. He's in great shape. You could tell he's so much more relaxed this year. I mean, last year he was traded to the Braves. He's a quiet guy. I mean, everybody likes him. He's real friendly and all that, but he's not the kind of boisterous guy that's going to come into a clubhouse. And he's traded. The spring training has already started, and he's replacing Freddie Freeman. There was so much pressure on that guy, even if he didn't show it from the fans and everybody.
Well, anytime you go to a new organization, I think, especially,
and he's going hometown,
a team trying to win. I mean, it's one thing to go to a team that's you get traded Pirates. There's not all this pressure. It's like, all right, well, I don't know why they even got me because we're going to lose 115 games. But when you get traded to a team that's looking to win, and there's all this pressure and expectations, and you're going from Oakland to a bigger state, like bigger crowds, bigger expectations, crazier atmosphere, way more studs around, so it's harder to stand out. I think he seems like a guy that would want to blend in, but I don't think too many guys can just. If anybody, Latin dudes seem to do it the best. Seamlessly transfer into a chaotic atmosphere, be out of their comfort zone, and I think a lot of that's just the games they play at home in the off season that are crazy. And then also they are so used to being out of their comfort zone, being in a different country.
Exactly. Different language. They're not as aware of all the chatter that's going on or don't care.
There's not a lot you can throw at those guys.
Right. And he's coming home to his hometown, and it's replacing Freddie. That's huge, man. Everybody's like, okay, so you're replacing Freddie, huh? All right, let's see what you can do. It's like, and then he got off to a good start. He's hitting tons of doubles, but no homers. And then he started hitting homers. And then he went in the worst slump of his career late in the season. Everybody's like, oh, my God, Freddie never slumped like that. And then he had the couple of balls that he just missed that he never misses. He's like, I don't even know what's happening, man. I never miss balls like that. But he had to have been feeling it.
I think that's the type of stuff that happens when you're feeling that pressure I'm talking about is you do something that never happens. Like, shut my glove. I can't catch. What do you that's the type of stuff that happens when you're making your major league debut or coming – onto a new team where it's just like, I'm feeling so much pressure that I couldn't catch a ball right to my chest as a major league first baseman.
And then it happened a couple of times, and it's almost like, okay, now it's got to be thinking, okay, here it's just easy, you know.
Yeah.
He's thinking
and then but what happens? You start thinking about how to catch. You know, you've done it your whole life, and then that ball's coming. You're like thinking about when to close your glove.
Yeah.
And then you do it too early, or something weird happens, just because of it becoming a thing.
One more thing before we get off here. The Braves media, Liberty Media, you know, they have to release their quarterly reports because they're the only publicly or one of only two publicly owned teams. So they have to release their earnings, which is great for us. MLB hates it because they don't want to see people to know how much teams are making.
You're right.
It's hard to hide it though in this. You got to, if you know how to read the stuff, you know, it's really complicated. So the average person probably not going to look at it, but it's all there. You cannot hide it because you got to give it to. Well, anyway, Braves released theirs again, the quarterly report. This was for the annual, for the whole thing for 2022. They had record revenues. They made $588 million in revenues last year, record. They still reported a loss, an operating loss, because, you know, they spent more for players. They spent more. They have debt. They have all these different things. They had operating. It's complicated, but they reported a revenue loss of operating income loss of 15 million.
That's rich people stuff.
Right. But the thing that jumped out to me, other than the $588 million in total revenues, God damn, they made over $500 million last year, revenues. But the thing that stood out to me was now we know what it means for a team. Because I don't think we've ever seen this, because teams will have you think that they don't make a ton of money on the postseason.
Right.
They'll have you think they don't, it's not as high as you think. Well, we know pretty much exactly what the Braves made for winning the World Series, because their fourth quarter revenues went from $102 million in 2021. That's between October 31st, December 31st. So that's just for basically winning the World Series.
Right.
They went from, or October 1st too, they went from $102 million for the fourth quarter in 2021 to $53 million last year when they made first round, lost and exit. Only played 2 home games last year.
So
the
double.
Previous year they played the division series at home, NLCS at home, and 3 World Series games at home. Then everything else, because the Braves are maximizing this stuff because they got the battery, which was packed every night. They had to turn people away. They had so many people there. So they're making even more, right? And all the other teams are now starting to build out their ballparks too and have these villages and all this stuff. Everybody's trying to do it now. Anaheim's building one around their park. So the Braves literally made $49 million more in 2021 for that fourth quarter than they made last year. So the World Series was worth advancing those extra $50 million and that's not including at all what the players made, which was over $400,000 a piece,
right,
in player share for advancing and win the World Series. 400, that's like almost $500,000 a piece.
That's crazy. I would think it'd be more, you know, to take a team to the World Series.
400,000. That's like 400 million. 400,000 the playoff share. Yeah, almost $500,000 a piece. Almost $500,000 a piece to player. And anybody else, they gave a full share too, whether it's clubbies or anybody else.
Yeah, usually pretty generous with those too.
Yeah. So that's on top of the team itself made $49 million for winning the World Series. So think about that when a team's deciding whether at the deadline, they got a really good team in contention and all that, and they're deciding whether to spend that extra $5-10 million to make some trades or whatever. If you think you can make the difference in winning the World Series,
hey, you're going to net 35 if you spend 15.
It might be worth 5 times that investment that you could make rather than sit pat and get
or even
eliminated.
Just signing a player in the offseason, you know, committing an extra 15 or 20. It's just if if you're out in the first round.
Right.
Now it's a negative net decision. So
it is winning the World Series is obviously the goal of everybody. You don't need extra motivation, but if players can get another $500,000 and the team can make another $50 million for winning the World Series, that's a hell of a lot of motivation on top of just wanting to be the best.
Yeah.
Financially.
I would think it'd be even more than that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that doesn't take into account some of the other stuff that came in as a result too, because think about it. They kept making money after the end of that quarter.
Got it. This is just that quarter.
That's just through December 31st, because that doesn't include all the season tickets that they sold in January and February leading up to the next year.
Yeah, I'm looking at it like that's worth
and all the gear and all the
$300 million to win the World Series.
Right. If you take into account all the more tickets that were sold and all those people buying everything and parking and all that coming to the ballpark the next year because of the won World Series. Yeah, I'm sure it does end up being well over 100 million more.
Yeah.
But that's just right there for those 3 months difference. So anyway, they're making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And once
it's nice to see that out there because
and once they get all the debt paid down and everything, it gets lower as the years go by from building and all the stuff they've added, because they're still building in that. Once they've got it all built and it's just more revenues coming in because the leases keep going up, apartments there. They're building this luxury tower, the Henry Aaron or the Aaron, the Hank or whatever it's going to be called, luxury apartments beyond left field. Beautiful, like $1 million condos.
Nice.
There's going to be a lot more. And the Braves are getting a percentage of everything at the Battery. Everything.
That's the way to do it.
Yep.
I mean, it's crazy to think that it took that long for teams to put that together. The first time I saw it was, Wrigleyville, but also in Philly. When Philly put all those bars across the street that were always slammed.
Right.
I was like, man, that's pretty. I don't know if the team owned that or if that was somebody else's.
Drop in the bucket compared to what the Braves have got.
Nothing compared to the Battery.
Now they're trying to do it in every sport. You see the NBA arenas, they're wrapping retail around them. And the football stadiums are building now, and the parking lots are trying to build villages, but especially baseball because you play 81 games.
Yeah, and you think about all the traffic and everything to get there. What are people supposed to do if they don't sit in traffic?
Right.
And after the game too, if you don't
like at Turner Field.
Yeah, Turner Field was like
there was nowhere to go if you got there 2 hours before the game. There was nowhere to go.
And after the game, I didn't even bother leaving until I would wait an hour and a half.
Fans had nowhere to go. Fans had nowhere to go.
I remember one time. So if we left Turner Field right after the game, the cops would let you through this one exit that they closed off, and you could just jet in and be out of there in 10 minutes. But if you missed that, I remember one time I got stuck in that Turner Field. The cop wasn't there that day or something.
Oh, it was bad.
It was like I was getting home at the same time as I would if I would have just waited an hour and drove home.
If you didn't know the surface streets and how to get out of there immediately and go down towards Grant Park, you tried to go to the highway straight from there. Yeah, you sat there for a long time. It was bad. Yeah,
so you give people something to do that kind of nullifies that. Now
they can leave.
Have some food, beer.
Yeah, because it's not easy to get out of there after at the Battery afterwards, but it doesn't matter because your car's already parked. You can just walk over to the restaurant, bar, whatever, walk around, people watch, whatever.
Hang out, and then it dies down
for an hour. So, and that's just ching ching for the Braves. Cash register rolling at all times.
I need a casino.
Anyway. Oh, I'm sure that's probably coming.
Yep, I think
that's
so.
Legal. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, we'll keep doing this 1 a week before leading up to the regular season. Then we'll start with 2 a week, and things will get really interesting in another week or two when pit starters start going, the regulars start going 3-4 innings, and you send out a lot of the minor leaguers, and the regular hitters are getting 3-4 at bats. Then it'll be really interesting. Right now, it's kind of hard to draw a whole.
It's hard to gauge early on.
Yeah. But the big thing is health, and the Braves so far have, knock on wood, avoided any major injuries. And man, you see some of the injuries around baseball. Wow, devastating.
Gavin Lux.
Oh my God, ACL. He's got you counting.
Musgrove broke his toe.
Yeah, you counting on Lux to be your shortstop.
That's how baseball goes. You give up on Trey. You let Trey Turner walk, and
yep.
Here you go.
So now they have the other guys not going to the WBC because he's got to get his ass ready to play to be the regular shortstop every day.
No, we can't risk it now. You're staying here.
So I fully understand why Snit is taking it so easy on not taking any veterans on the road yet and all this, because teams learned last year that you don't need 6 weeks of spring training to get position players ready and relievers ready. Like Mentor hasn't pitched in a game yet, and you open them up so much more risk to injuries just by playing guys that many more. If a guy only needs 30, 40 at bats to get ready, then he doesn't need 70,
Yep.
Chef used to tell me I need 20 ABs and I'm ready. Now, Chef is extreme, but most guys don't need more than 40 to
5
50
games.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're not having to build up stamina as a reliever, you're just risking injury, man, pitching a whole lot in spring training.
I would hit like my 6th game and I'd be like, it's when I knew I made the team. When you're not on the team, you're like, shit, don't mess it up. Like I keep this going, don't mess it up. But I'd hit my 5th or 6th when I knew I was on the team, and I'm like, the only place to go from here is down. I'm ready. Everything's locked in.
Yeah.
The only thing I can do is get into a bad habit from here. It's like let's get the season going.
And you always see starters. Not always, but you see so many starters in that last start or two when they're like, it's just a tune-up, and they go out for like 3 innings and get shelled. And it's like they had a really good spring, and they go out for this tune-up, and they're just horseshit. It's like, in their head, they're going, okay, I'm not going to go out here and go max effort every pitch, try to make every pitch perfect and all this. I'm healthy. I'm ready. I'm going to relax.
Yep.
Get to opening day. So I think the tune-up, in effect, doesn't even really do anything, man. It's just you're just treading water to get to opening day.
Yep.
And I think Snit is approaching it like that. There's no reason to run Charlie Morton out there in February,
No.
He's going to be your 5th starter, 4th starter.
Well, if older guys too, you talk to them, you're like, what do you want to?
What do you need?
You want 5 starts, and then you just map it out.
And he had a normal offseason, so he came in ready, did his regular throwing, not like last year.
Yeah.
So, all right, that's it. 755 is real. We'll talk to you guys again soon. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.